Hello, welcome back to U.S. History. This is Roman numeral II, FDR and the New Deal. Hopefully you all were able to take that first quiz for Chapter 21 and that you guys are ready to move on to now the presidency of Franklin Delano Roosevelt. I just want to put out a note. I added another video that I found on YouTube showing the inauguration of FDR, his inaugural address that took place. I know it's grainy, I know it's not high definition, all that stuff, but it does give you some detail as to, it gives you basically how he sounded. It shows his motives and methods, and it will also help you on the homework that I'll be assigning at the end of class time today. Let's begin. With the Great Depression at its worst and the banking crisis in the background to the inauguration taking place, Roosevelt's first job was to calm the fears of the people who sensed America was on the brink of destruction. There's a quote that I want you guys to associate with FDR. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. And maybe spiders too, according to the picture. In case you're wondering, on the video that I posted, it's located at about 2 minutes and 50 seconds into the video when he gives that quote, in case you wanted to hear that line especially. This famous line given in his inaugural address would give the impression that FDR would save the day. Letter A, fighting fear. One of the first things that FDR is going to do as president is that he is going to call Congress into a special session and he's going to declare a bank holiday. Since Congress wasn't expected to reconvene until December, by the way, he was inaugurated in March, Congress wasn't supposed to be called until December, 9 months later, Roosevelt demanded a special session of Congress immediately in order to begin implementing his New Deal plans. In order to end the banking crisis, he ordered all banks shut down for 4 days and only the most financially sound ones to reopen. Most banks afterwards were. This helped end the banking crisis. He also passed an executive order forbidding the export of gold. Later on, he's going to pass the Emergency Banking Act, forcing all Americans to turn in gold in exchange for paper money. He took America off the gold standard and set the price of gold higher than it had been before. This made the dollar worth less and allowed Roosevelt to pursue inflationary programs. The first 100 days. Today, the first sign of success or failure in a president is measured by their first 100 days in office and how much they have accomplished during that time. This measuring system can be first found with FDR. His first 100 days in office would see more done than any president before him. FDR, after all, had the support of the people and a Democratic Congress to get most of his New Deal plans passed. Those who helped him come up with his New Deal plan was known as his brain trust. Definition of his brain trust: a group of advisors who helped FDR create his New Deal plans. As mentioned before, the U.S. got off the gold standard. Also, prohibition will be repealed during this time. One of the things, quick question before I get on to Fireside Chats. U.S. got off the gold standard. Prohibition was repealed. Probably there'd be some opinions on these if you had lived during this time, whether it was a good thing, it was a bad thing. The gold standard, of course, was how the U.S. money was based off of. After this point and to our present day, our money is only based on the promise that the government will uphold it. If anything happened to our government, our money system would cease to be worth anything. It's just paper. But by getting it off the gold standard, no longer would it be backed by any actual form of currency. just backed by the government. Also, prohibition. We've already mentioned this before, talked about prohibition being repealed. While I'd probably be in favor of prohibition, the fact of the matter was it wasn't working. People were willing to break the law over it. And the fact that a good chunk of the population was willing to break the law, it proved that prohibition wasn't worth maintaining. It's very difficult to legislate morality unless a majority of Americans are in favor of it. Well, in short, prohibition's repealed, gold standard has been removed, and now FDR is continuing to do things. One thing that he did was he began using what were called Fireside Chats. FDR kept Americans informed of government action through his Fireside Chats. A definition or a description of this, these were radio messages that he used that promoted the New Deal program. In short, they inspired the people to believe in him. They didn't have Wi-Fi, they didn't have internet, they didn't have Twitter, they didn't have television in order for the president to present his message to the people, and so he would use the radio. And on a semi-regular basis, he would give these fireside chats to the American populace. It helped to reassure Americans. It helped to explain to Americans what was going on. About half of Americans owned radios, and many more gathered together to listen to the president speak. In fact, FDR became the first president to take advantage of mass media communications. After this video, I plan on actually posting another video that I found online about one of his fireside chats. Actually, it was his first fireside chat, which had to do with the banking holiday. That's just extra material in case that interests you to see what he sounded like, to see what he had to say about the bank holiday. Let's move on. Number 2, alphabet agencies. The goal of FDR and the New Deal was relief, recovery, and reform. These are the 3 R's, FDR's goals. He set up many programs to achieve these goals. Either the program was intended to provide immediate relief, to bring economic recovery, or to bring about economic reform. And those were the goals of his New Deal. This political cartoon shows us, illustrates to us what FDR is like, or I should say trying to illustrate what's going on. The man seated in the chair there is Uncle Sam. Of course, you can see his starred pajamas that he's wearing, just showing his stars and stripes. He looks unwell. He needs a doctor. FDR representing the doctor. He's coming in with his New Deal remedies. And Congress represented by the nurse, always willing to help. Of course, we may have to change remedies if we don't get results. And you can see all of the different remedies that they're going to use to try to solve Uncle Sam's sickness. And some of these programs we'll talk about now. These programs are listed in your fast facts, the ones we're going to talk about. So again, you don't need to write the information down. It's already written down for you, just so you know you see them. The CCC, the Civilian Conservation Corps, put men to work on conservation programs. Remember, conservation has to do with taking care of the environment, national parks, national forests, that kind of thing, controlled by the Army. There were reforestation and soil conservation programs, to name a few. It became one of the most popular programs of the New Deal, employing about 3 million young men. It emphasized rigid discipline and team effort. They wore uniforms, they marched like soldiers, carrying not rifles, but shovels, rakes, and hoes. This program, extremely popular, lasted until World War II. Another one was the Public Works Administration. This allowed men to build public buildings like schools, courthouses, hospitals, bridges, and other public facilities. They also built planes and ships for the nation's military. This program lasted about 6 years. The Civil Works Administration and the Federal Emergency Relief Administration also did some of these things too. Another program was the Works Progress Administration, WPA. This was created to eliminate the relief doles. Wait, what's a dole again? Oh yeah, that's government handouts. The WPA hired almost anyone in almost any kind of job. It constructed public buildings and recreation areas. They supported actors, directors, writers, and artists in programs for the arts, and they manufactured a wide variety of other jobs. Yet none of these relief programs were able to fully eradicate unemployment. Yet none of these relief agencies were fully able to eradicate unemployment. Another one was called the Agricultural Adjustment Act, the AAA. It sought to subsidize farm products to aid farmers. In anticipation for a 1933 surplus harvest, the government paid farmers to destroy their cotton fields and kill their pigs and other crops. This policy was greatly detested considering the U.S. had thousands of city children who wore rags and were undernourished. Farmers suffering from the low prices of the Depression often found that a wagon load of wheat would not bring enough money to buy a $4 pair of shoes. In addition, it was cheaper to burn their corn crops in their stoves than to buy coal to fuel their fires. The National Industrial Recovery Act, the NIRA, is sought to organize voluntary guidelines for industries. This was hoped to increase employment, maintain wages, and reduce unwanted competition. Inside the NIRA was the NRA. No, not the National Rifle Association, but the National Recovery Administration. Those who followed the NIRA were allowed to fly the Blue Eagle symbol of the NRA, the agency designed to carry out the activities of the NIRA. So the idea was, if they follow the NIRA, they're allowed to hold the blue symbol that you see up there, the "We do our part," which of course makes you sound like a really good American and you're helping people out. And, well, we'll talk about why that's going to create some controversy a bit later. Another thing that was created was the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, the FDIC. This was an agency devised to insure the bank deposits of millions of Americans against loss. The FDIC is still in effect today. Basically, the idea is if you have money in the bank and the bank closes, goes bankrupt for some reason, the government will insure you up to a certain amount of the money that you, quote-unquote, lost. Before this time, when they had the run on the banks during the Great Depression, there was no FDIC, so that's why people were truly fearful of losing their money. Now with the FDIC, now everyone is insured. Another one is the Tennessee Valley Authority, the TVA. They built dams on the Tennessee River to provide flood control and cheap electricity. The way I remember it is I see cheap electricity and I see TV, televisions run on electricity. So if that helps you, good to go. The next one is the Social Security Act. The Social Security Act established age-old pensions and unemployment insurance for American workers. Should there be any changes to the fact that the elderly receive money from the government? That's an argument that's been brought up. Today, people can start getting Social Security benefits from the government when they turn 62 years old. Well, since life expectancy has gone up quite a bit since the 1930s, some people theorize that maybe they should increase the age to a higher time. People at age 62, many people think should still be able to work, with exceptions, of course. These are just the most important New Deal agencies that FDR set into action during his first term in office. As humorist Will Rogers said, "The whole country is with him, just so he does something. If he burned down the Capitol, we would cheer and say, well, we at least got a fire started anyhow." That was the view of many Americans. Whether or not these programs will actually help end the Great Depression is still up for debate. For tonight's homework, your last assignment this week is page 119, 120 in the activities book. It's over FDR's first inaugural address. I hope you all have a good Easter weekend. hope that you all get an opportunity to worship the Lord on Easter Sunday, if not in a church service, at least online or on a radio. Hope you all have a good rest of the day. Hope you enjoy the 4-day weekend. Be good, do good.